Hi everyone, hope you're all having a great day today. In today's video, I'm going to cover BlackBerry Stock because they had their Q4 earnings for fiscal year 2024 on April 3rd of 2024. I'm going to go over the numbers, conference call. I'm going to go a little bit of the technical analysis on the stock side, go over short positions in terms of percentage points, and my thoughts overall on how the stock will be moving and how it's moving overall for the most part. Now, if we look at last quarter, which was December 20th, 2023, the reason why I'm going over it is because they provided guidance for the next quarter, which was the Q4, which I'm going to go over, and they were expecting it to be 150 to 159 million, right? And they ended up beating that. Again, this earnings personally, I thought it was great. The only thing is though, in terms of the yearly guidance for fiscal year 2025, hypothetically flat. I'm going to go and show year over years in terms of revenue and all that stuff. And like hypothetically it was a decline over the years, and now it looks like it's stabilized, and hopefully we see it to the upside. And again, I stated in either last video or 2 videos ago, this 12 months, in my opinion, hypothetically is more of like a foundation build-up kind of thing where in essence, like the stock could still go up slowly and all stuff, but I'm not expecting any major spikes hypothetically until after this 12 months, because they're expected to be cash flow positive on the cybersecurity side, and they're already cash flow positive on the IoT side, which is like QNX and BlackBerry Ivy and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Again, BlackBerry Ivy is still in the early phases, so revenue for BlackBerry Ivy is not substantial yet because it's just in the early phases, but yet IoT is still growing, and this was the best quarter for IoT, which is awesome, very promising in my opinion. But either way, I digress. So they were expecting 150 to 159 million, but they reported 173 million, so that's pretty massive overall. And the benefit of that is because last year, same quarter, so March 30th, 2023, they had total company revenue at 151 million. So they beat street expectations. I believe the street expectations was 153 million, and they beat the street expectations, plus they beat last year's revenue, so year-over-year growth, right? But then if you look at last quarter, though, the only thing is, though, it's a slight decline. So 175 million, 173 million, shy of 2 million. Again, in terms of business, there's always like cycles. It's not necessarily continuous growth. It hopefully would be, but it's not necessarily always the case. But hopefully we move towards that to the point that we're constantly growing every quarter and have year-over-year growth, quarter-over-quarter growth, which would be awesome. But either way, next IoT revenue was at 55 million, or sorry, expectations was 62 to 66 million, and they ended up getting it on the high end. IoT revenue fell at an all-time quarterly record of 66 million. Again, all-time high record, and we haven't seen BlackBerry Ivy kick in full throttle, not in terms of adaptations for the system. Well, technically still in the early phases too, but companies are adapting it in a way. But revenue, in my opinion, hasn't kicked in for the most part, pretty much anything. The small amounts, but like I'm talking about like where it's substantial, right? 25% year-over-year increase. IoT gross margin remained at 85%, which is great gross margin. Cybersecurity revenue was 92 million, a 5% year-over-year increase. Cybersecurity gross margin was 65%. So good stuff. I believe there was a slight decline for the margin for the cybersecurity side. Used to be 68%, 65 dropped. Not sure exactly why, because they did do some cost cutting, but I might be wrong with the percentage. But roughly, for the most part, it's good though, still either way. The substantial part is, so they beat the estimates that they were giving, 83 to 88 million, with they had 92 million ended up. But the awesome part about it is the IoT revenue for last year, same quarter, March 30th, 2023, was 53 million. So obviously they stated that it was the best quarter they had for IoT. So obviously they beat it at 66 million this quarter, which was Q4. But the cybersecurity revenue was 88 million last year, same quarter, but they beat it. So hypothetically, year-over-year growth also, not hypothetically, but legitimately year-over-year growth for the cybersecurity side. The only thing is, though, last quarter, if you compare it with December 20th, 2023, which is Q3 quarter, IoT revenue was 55 million, so they beat that this quarter as well. So quarter-over-quarter growth, year-over-year growth for the IoT side of the business. But then the cybersecurity side, even though it's year-over-year growth, it is year-over-year growth, but it's a quarter-over-quarter decline. They had 114 million last quarter for cybersecurity side, but they're still working on it. Again, they're trying to make it cash flow positive as soon as possible. And from the conference call, I'm going to jump the gun a little bit, is, in my opinion, John G. Matteo, it seems like he's more focused on making the company cash flow positive / more profitable, successful in a way. Because I've noticed during the Q&A, John Chen, obviously, you could argue he was focused on that, but the problem is there was a couple times that, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, the way I felt, he would answer questions. He's like, yeah, we're trying to do it, and like kind of laugh it off, or like, haha, we're trying kind of thing. But like in a serious way, but at the same time, it's just like, it didn't seem like it was a like full concentration, as opposed to John G. Mateo. Again, this is just what I feel, so it's not really backed up by anything, but that's what I was sensing when I was listening to the conference call. He would jump in even times that he didn't need to jump in to answer questions because somebody else would answer questions, but then he would still jump in and make it almost seem like reassuring, like we're doing as much as we can. We've done a lot within the short time we had, but at the same time, we have a lot more to go to do, basically, right? But from the way I picked it up, it seems like he's extremely focused on making the company profitable / the company grow overall. So that's great. If that is the case, you always want to see great leadership and all that stuff. But again, that's what I've sensed in the quarter. And I could be wrong. It could have just been the way he was answering questions just by chance and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what I sensed, which is awesome. If that is the case, again, we see the cybersecurity side revenue grow in terms of, being cash flow positive. That'll be a great sign for the company to move forward. Again, it seems like for the most part, this 12 months is basically setting the foundation and somewhat being a little bit flatlined in terms of revenue, but then hopefully go to the upside right after the 12 months. But yeah, so then we have cybersecurity ARR increased sequentially by 3% to 280 million. And then, by the way, I should mention the backlog. IoT division reports record revenue quarter and QNX royalty backlog of 815 million, which is amazing. And I believe they cover it here. They said that it increased this year by 27% in terms of backlog. So that's like a little bit over 200 million, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and then licensing and other revenue was 15 million. Non-GAAP operating profit was 16 million and GAAP operating loss was 56 million. Non-GAAP basic earnings per share was 3 cents positive. Street estimates was negative 3 cents if I'm not mistaken. And GAAP basic loss per share was 10 cents. Adjusted EBITDA was 21 million. Total cash and cash equivalent short-term and long-term investments was 298 million. And cash used by operations decreased by 52 sequentially to 15 million. Now for fiscal year, full fiscal year 2024 financial highlights. This is why I want to go over the numbers in terms of this is not the forecast yet in terms of the outlook, but I want to specifically go over the revenue that we had and then what they're projecting versus previous years and so on and so forth. So total company revenue was 853 million. This includes, by the way, the 218 million related to the sale of legacy patents portfolio in Q1, which, if you remember, they sold core patents in a way, hypothetically. I think it was core, I can't remember exactly, but it was a total $900 million in terms of contract where it was going to be paid out in 5 to 7 years kind of thing. And the first chunk that they had was 218 million for the Q1 of this fiscal year, actually, right? Now, the reason why I'm specifically harping on that somewhat is I don't know if this full fiscal year of 2025 that they're projecting 586 million to 616 million will include maybe potentially another payment for these patents because, again, it's from what John Chen stated, this was the big one, and it could be up to 900 million, by the way, but then the rest of them will be smaller. I don't know necessarily if it's including any kind of patent payment during this fiscal year estimate or not, but we'll see. Total company non-GAAP and GAAP gross margin was 61% for the fiscal year of 2024, by the way. Non-GAAP operating profits was 36 million and GAAP operating loss was 125 million. Non-GAAP basic earnings per share was 5 cents and GAAP basic loss per share was 22 cents. By the way, 853 minus 218 is about 635 million. So 635 million, if you do not count the patent sale amount into the revenue, they're at 635 million, right? So now I'll bring back that number to look over the previous years and so on and so forth, but I just want to look at the forecast. So total company BlackBerry revenue for the next quarter, which will be reported on, I believe they projected June 26th of 2024. So Q1 for fiscal year, the first quarter, they're expecting 130 to 138 million. Now, in terms of street estimates, I think they already have projections of what they're expecting. Analysis right about here, BlackBerry. The street estimates, they're expecting on the average about 144 million for the quarter. So they're almost not really believing the not street estimates, but BlackBerry's guidance. Again, maybe it might not be updated or something, but hopefully they get better than the street estimates in terms of beating the revenue, right? So even if they get on the high end 138 million, they're not going to beat street estimates unless they get updated and so on and so forth. And let me actually pull up the Q1 of this. Actually, I already have the Q1. No, I don't. So let me pull up the Q1 of this year and they had 373 million minus 218, I guess, if you minus that. So let's just do it quickly. 373 minus 218, and you're at 155 million. So they have to essentially, to have year-over-year growth, beat street expectations. To beat street expectations, they have to be like 145 million. To have year-over-year growth, they have to be like around 156 million, right? And that's not including patents, portions, and all that stuff. But technically, hypothetically, to analysts, I'm not sure. If they have anything less than 373 million, they could technically consider it as a year-over-year decline regardless, potentially. But if you really look at the numbers and subtract the patent sale, the 218 specifically, then it's not necessarily year-over-year decline in terms of the core business, but in terms of both division, cybersecurity and IoT side. But either way, regardless, they have to pass 155 million to have year-over-year growth and beat street expectations. And then hypothetically, they'll still have a quarter-over-quarter decline because, again, the quarter for this one, again, reported on April 3rd of 2024, was 173 million. So if they want to have quarter-over-quarter growth and year-over-year growth plus beat street expectations, hypothetically, they have to hit over 173 million. So over 173 million. So either 174, 175, something like that, to have year-over-year growth, quarter-over-quarter growth, and beat street expectations. But either way, so hypothetically, I'm digressing a little bit too much. In terms of IoT revenue, it's kind of weird. Again, they did state in the conference call that Q1 is typically expected to be on the low side in terms of sales, all stuff, usually for them throughout the year. So this quarter is going to be low coming up. But I don't know if they're necessarily setting it low to like lower the expectations and then end up beating them. We'll see. We shall see. But IoT revenue at 48 to 52 million. So that is going to be a quarter-over-quarter decline because they got 66 million this quarter. And if we look at last year's Q1, they were at 45 million. So that will cause 45 year-over-year growth. So year-over-year growth, but quarter-over-quarter decline. That's a downfall. And then cybersecurity at 78 million to 82 million, which will cause a quarter-over-quarter decline again because we had 92 million this one. So yeah, quarter-over-quarter decline. And then year-over-year decline as well. So year-over-year decline, quarter-over-quarter decline for the cybersecurity business. Again, this might seem not the greatest hypothetically, but it's in essence is more of a foundational year from the standpoint I'm looking at it, right? Again, they have divided the cybersecurity and IoT business into terms of two divisions. And again, IoT is cash flow positive, but cybersecurity still working on it to be cash flow positive. The thing is though, for the most part, for the forecast, the reason why I'm saying it's essentially flatlined, again, we had 635 million for this year, for fiscal year 24, and we have hypothetically on the high end 616 million, which is not good because I believe street estimates are already expecting revenue for the year. Current year, they're expecting average of a 631 million for the fiscal year. So they're expecting way past the high point. So I think they'll pass it because I'm pretty sure they're not including the patent sales at all in terms of numbers. And I think they're hypothetically giving very, very conservative numbers and then essentially will beat it later on. But either way, so we'll have year-over-year decline if they only have 616 million because this year, fiscal year that just passed and finished, was 635 million. And if we look at previous year, so fiscal year 2023, we had 656 million. So 656, 635, and 616, hypothetically, it's consistently year-over-year decline. And then if we look at the previous years, I remember it was like 700 something, and then previous years were like 800 something. So 718 million, and then fiscal year of 2020, let me see, where is it? Yeah, so fiscal year of 2021, 919 million. So, and then total company GAAP revenue of 893 million. So that's the problem. That's the reason why hypothetically, if you're seeing the stock going down, it's essentially everyone wants to see revenue grow, right? And again, this quarter was great. In my opinion, it was awesome. The only thing is though, if you look at the numbers in terms of the forecast, right? Again, it is stabilizing. And I don't know if I already stated this, by the way. I'm not a professional, or this is all just my opinion, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. And I do own shares in the company, so keep that in mind while you're watching this video as well. But in essence, I'm thinking this 12 months is basically stabilizing. Stock could potentially obviously go up and all stuff, go down and so on and so forth. And it's all news-based and revenue and all stuff. But what people really, really want to see is revenue. And if that starts growing, then the stock will significantly grow, hopefully to the upside completely. Again, we're sitting at $2.82 right now per share, which gives the company a market cap of $1.66 billion. This is the US side, by the way, $2.82 American. Okay, so to quickly recap the numbers for the revenue before I jump into the conference call, Q&As and all stuff, is we had a year-over-year growth. We beat street expectations, quarter-over-quarter decline. The IoT business side was year-over-year growth, quarter-over-quarter growth. And then the cybersecurity was, I believe, year-over-year growth, but quarter-over-quarter decline, which is unfortunate. In terms of forecast, for the most part, essentially, over the years, we've seen a decline, but pretty much for the most part, flatline. I'm pretty sure these numbers are conservative. They're going to end up beating them. In terms of street estimates for the quarter, though, for Q1, these are on the low side. Q1 is going to be pretty tricky because they're going to have to beat, hypothetically, to have like year-over-year, quarter-over-quarter growth, beat street estimates, like to do the whole 9 yards kind of stuff. They're going to have to hit about 174 to 175 million, which might be quite difficult unless, again, hypothetically, if you add the patent sale into it. But even if you do, they still need that 174, 175 because to have that quarter-over-quarter growth, right? The year-over-year growth, they have to be above 155 million, not counting the patent sale, because the 155 million was what I calculated without the patent sale. So the analysts are going to specifically count numbers specifically to what they are, right? There's nothing to fluff, hypothetically. As you shouldn't, right? You need to look at the numbers hardcore in a way, right? But yeah, there's that. But yeah, the quarter is great, in my opinion. It's just what happened, in my opinion, is essentially people want to see revenue increase. And from the forecast that they're given, it's hypothetically flatline. And essentially what they're doing is building a foundation, and then hopefully after 12 months, when the cybersecurity is cash flow positive, again, the IoT side of the business is cash flow positive, combined with that, then the company hypothetically should grow if they have good sales in terms of revenue going up, and then the stock should follow suit for the most part. Now, in terms of the Q&A and all that stuff, they predict cybersecurity revenue to increase in the year to come and revenue to be more predictable. So they stated that in the conference call that the cybersecurity revenue before wasn't necessarily predictable, with just contracts going left and right, like not left and right, but they were like big government contracts at once and then nothing later on or something like that. But now they're going to have predictable revenue coming in. They expect to be cash flow positive and positive earnings per share at the end of the year of fiscal year of 2025. So that's awesome. Backlog, by the way. So one of the analysts asked a great question. They're saying in terms of the backlog for the 815 million, again, I believe it was increased by 27% for this fiscal year in terms of backlog. But I got to find that. I should have probably saw that earlier before recording this. Sorry about that. Or actually, they mentioned it here. Sorry. Where is it? BlackBerry delivered a solid finish to the fiscal year, setting a number of new records in the process. Despite industry delays to automotive software development programs, our IoT division delivered its strongest ever quarter for revenue, as well as its best year for adding QNX royalty backlog from design wins that resulted in 27% year-over-year growth to approximately 815 million, said John G. Mateo, CEO of BlackBerry, et cetera, so on and so forth. So that's great jumps. That's, to me, again, shows great promise for growth for the company. But again, I do own shares in the company, so again, I don't want to seem like I'm too optimistic where I could be potentially biased. That's the only problem. So the thing is, in terms of backlog, somebody asked a great question. They said, in terms of backlog, how far is it delayed? Are we expecting it like hypothetically next year or something like that? And John G. Mateo said, we can't really say for sure, so that's why we haven't stated like a specific time frame. But he stated something about like 4, 6, 8 quarters, which is roughly about 1 to 2 years, give or take. So backlog is still delayed for about, like, let's say 6 quarters from now. And then cautious due to vehicle launches are slow at the moment. So like what is basically meant by that, again, I've had a video where the CFO of Ford talks about, like, for example, the first phase, electrification, so on and so forth. The key point about BlackBerry Ivy is it's not only for electric vehicles. It could be for any vehicle, ICE, hybrid, electric vehicles, and so on and so forth. But the CFO of Ford stated that he's excited for EVs and all stuff, but he's more excited for, that was the first phase of vehicles, but he's excited for the second phase, which is connected services vehicles and all that stuff, basically at BlackBerry Ivy. And that's technically a little bit ways to go, but it's hypothetically coming soon. So in terms of development for automotive sector, in terms of big features, they do take some time. So by the time they ramp that up, hypothetically, let's say it's another 2 years, and then it fully gets adapted, we're looking at probably potentially 2 to 3 years, and then the numbers will come in. Again, this is still in the growing phase, which is unfortunate because a lot of BlackBerry investors it's waiting is just like horrendous hypothetically, but the revenue is in the horizon, if that makes sense, somewhat. So that's the thing. With the cost cutting of cybersecurity, okay, so they also mentioned about the cost cutting for cybersecurity, and John G. Mateo said now it's more efficient. So that's awesome, because obviously you don't want to waste money for R&D. But they've already stated that before in one of the tech reviews or something like that, where they stated that the reason why cybersecurity was basically eating a bunch of R&D cost was they were investing so much to make it more advanced. Now it's advanced enough where now they could just cut costs in R&D completely and just start selling the product. So that's for the Q&A. The conference call was quite short, actually. Not too many analyst questions were asked. Now, in terms of the stock, I just wanted to show this technical aspect of it. Back during the pandemic, like COVID and all stuff, we dropped down, broke through a level, but we ended up going up and bouncing off it at $3.15 US back in 2020, April specifically. And then we came down again. This was right about here was when BlackBerry Ivy was announced, before the Wall Street bets everything. So this was in December, I believe it was December 4th or something like that, of 2020. So December 4th of 2020, we had the BlackBerry Ivy spike. Then I think we went slightly down. And then the next 4 or 5 weeks, maybe around January 14th, if I'm not mistaken, Wall Street bets comes in full throttle. We spike up, and then we start going down after like Robinhood shut down, Reddit shut down, so on and so forth. And then we end up trickling down to $3.15 of December of 2022, give or take, right? We bounced off it as support, and then we went back up and then came back down, and now it's acting as resistance. So as of March 2024, we hit it as resistance, about $3.15, give or take, US again. And then as of April 24th, we hit it as resistance again, give or take, around pretty much $3.15, $3.13, right? Now, the reason why I'm stating that is because for the most part, I think this level is not really that strong personally, but we do, if you look at the MACD lines and all that stuff, it is showing to the upside, so that's good, but that's more a little bit to the longer side. In terms of short term, we could be held between this level, potentially. The reason why I want to state that is because we still need some decent news, I guess, or decent revenues, and we're getting to the Q1. Hopefully the Q1 is not low as they're stating. I'm hoping that they beat it, so that way we could surpass these levels. And then what could help too, it's not essentially a short squeeze, but I'm just hoping that this could apply pressure to it, where in terms of being considered extremely shorted, you have to be over 20% of the stock has to be shorted. We're at, I would say, decently shorted territory. So if you look at the US stock, just the BB ticker symbol, and you can see as of 3:15, again, these are self-reported numbers. March 15th, it was at 8.18% shorted. And if you look at the Canadian side, so BB.TO, Toronto Stock Exchange ticker, it's as of 3/28, it's at 3%. So a little over 8%, because you got to combine both of them, because it's traded on both exchanges. So a little over 8%. So not extremely shorted territory. Again, the difference between extremely shorted and just decently shorted is extremely shorted could cause the actual domino effect, where if institutional holders of the short positions get called to reimburse the shares, that could trickle other short positions to do the same, because they'll drive up the share price and so on and so forth, causing a domino effect. If the short position is small, let's just say it was just 1%, it's not enough shares to cause that domino effect. So at 11%, I think it's decently shorted. It's just not necessarily huge enough to cause a domino effect, but I think it would be enough to like break some levels potentially if the revenue comes in. That's what we're looking at. At the end of the day, we just need a revenue increase, because I think the company is going to be doing well moving forward, given what they're saying, cash flow positive on the cybersecurity side, already cash flow positive on the IoT. BlackBerry Ivy's revenue is just basically, for the most part, still in the early phases, but once it kicks in, hopefully is very promising. And but yeah, I believe that's basically it for the most part. I covered the technical side, revenue numbers, conference call, so on and so forth. If there's any questions, drop them down below. I'll answer them as soon as possible. And if you do like this video, consider dropping a like. It helps the channel, so thank you so much for that. And I believe that's it. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks again for watching, and take care. Peace.